My son said it plain. Don't expect a dime from Dad's $92 million. That was the first mistake. My name is Richard Vance. The dad he referred to, my late wife, Celia, had barely been laid to rest. I was still wearing black, the lingering scent of funeral roses clinging to my old service jacket. I stood at the foot of the main staircase, gripping the banister Celia once polished, and watched them. They had converged on the estate, not for mourning, but for the feast and the fortune. The hallway buzzed. This one's mine. My grandson, Ethan, slapped a neon green sticky note onto the grandfather clock, then the leather armchair, then the cabinet with Celia's wedding china. He moved like a hostile force, claiming objectives he hadn't earned. His sister, Ruby, pointed her phone at the wall. "We'll remodel this once he's out," she said. "Spa room, maybe. Definitely better lighting." I kept standing. No one offered a chair. No one paused. My daughter-in-law, Jody, appeared with champagne flutes. "We're celebrating Celia's legacy," she chirped. "She built an empire, and now we carry it forward. And clean out the ghosts," someone muttered. Laughter erupted. My chair at the dining table was gone. They pointed me toward the mudroom instead. "You'll be more comfortable there, Colonel, away from the noise." I sat in silence, facing a mop bucket, holding my tea with two hands so it wouldn't shake. This felt like a debriefing in enemy territory. From the next room, the voices carried clearly. "This house smells like mothballs and death," said one. "Let's strip the wallpaper and gut the kitchen." My son, Peter, spoke. "We'll get the lake house. The boat's already under my name anyway." Then the whisper of betrayal. "He built soup, she built an empire," a cousin sneered. "Let him rot with the memories." I took a bite of cold chicken. It tasted like chalk. I swallowed it anyway. I didn't argue, but I reached into my sweater pocket and felt the crisp edges of the document I had kept safe for years. A bank memorandum, signed and notarized, dated 15 years ago. It declared me as co-founder and early investor in the family trust. My name was there, inked in blue, the kind of detail that matters in a court-martial or in probate. They didn't know. They never asked. 15 years ago, when the company was listing badly, facing bankruptcy like a dark sky approaching the flight line, it wasn't the lawyers that saved it. It was me. I sold every asset I held. My service medals, my grandfather's gold watch, even the vintage Corvette I'd restored. My entire tactical reserve. I didn't tell anyone. I just wired the money and whispered to Celia, "Use it, but don't ever let them know it came from me, not until the mission is critical." I stayed seated for another hour while they picked apart the art, the land, the memories. They were dividing up my skin while I was still breathing inside it. One of them walked into the mudroom, looked surprised, and said casually, "Maybe grab some bottled water from the fridge, Rich. You look pale." Then he left, not waiting for an answer. I kept my hand on that document, my strategy secure. The element of surprise was still mine. I stood up, adjusting my stance. The phase of observation was over. The counterattack sequence had begun. At some point, the champagne ran out and the music turned off, but the smell of greed still lingered, thicker than the dust on the drapes. I rose slowly. My knees ached. I steadied myself, not on the sink, but using the rigid posture I learned in basic training. I looked out the small window. The roses Celia planted were starting to wilt. No one had noticed. No one was observing the details. I walked back into the house. My footsteps were light, like the ghost they believed I already was. But I was not done. Not yet. I clutched the co-founder paper in my pocket, warm now from my palm. Let them drink. Let them decorate. The reading of the will was coming, and I had a pulse, a loud, steady, undeniable one. They look at me now like I'm a ghost, a shadow in their perfect story of success. But there's a chapter they erased because it didn't fit their version, the one where I saved everything and no one ever knew. 15 years ago, the company was crumbling. I remember Celia coming home late, her dress tie loosened, hands trembling. The bank had called. They were losing everything. "We just need one deal, Rich," she said, her eyes fixed on the fireplace. "Just one. If we can close with those investors in New York, it'll turn around." But she needed collateral she didn't have, and pride she refused to set aside. So I made a choice. That night, while she slept, I took out the velvet box from the back of the drawer. Inside were the last pieces of my service life. My father's engraved watch, the diamond earnings from our wedding night, the heavy gold cufflinks. Every memory had weight, and I sold them all quietly, without asking, without telling. I wired the funds directly to the company's escrow account the next morning and told her only one thing: use it. Don't let them see you fall. The deal closed 2 days later. The investors signed. The company lived. They called her visionary. They called her a self-made miracle. They never called me. A month later, I saw the new branding materials. Her face, bold on the front page, a slogan underneath, "Legacy Built Alone." I said nothing, but I remembered. I remembered the night I wrote the IPO pitch by hand. She was preparing for a crucial investor meeting and was hitting a wall. The industry was shifting. I sat at the kitchen table and I wrote. I outlined a multi-phase expansion strategy, projected shareholder value, and a scalable growth model. I had done it before, drawing up mission plans. I signed the document with a pen name, L. Brightwood. Something harmless, something clean. I mailed it to the office. She received it 2 days later. At dinner that night, she mentioned a strange proposal. "It's brilliant," she said, laughing. "Even the handwriting looks familiar like yours." I shrugged and kept stirring the soup. That proposal became the foundation of their IPO launch 6 months later. It brought in over $40 million. They hung a plaque in the lobby, inspired by ingenuity. Her ingenuity. I told myself the family needed one hero. It's funny the way men are taught to disappear gracefully into support, to take pride in being the engine while someone else gets the accolades. We're told that quiet loyalty is noble, but silence too long becomes erasure. Now they walk through my house, taping their names onto furniture, speaking of legacy like I was never part of it. They called me dead while I still breathed. There's a folder upstairs beneath the linens no one ever touches. Inside is the original handwritten draft. Folded next to it is a letter from the patent office, one that ties the pitch strategy to a registered idea. Registered not under the company, but under me. I never cashed the royalty checks. I never needed the money. I needed the quiet. I needed the dignity of knowing what I had done. But now they've drawn a line. They fed me shame. They stripped me of memory. So I've opened the folder again. I've spoken to my lawyer. I've hired a handwriting analyst. I've documented everything, not for revenge, but for truth. Because when they sit in that room and the will is read, and they hear my name tied not just to the trust, but to the legacy they thought was theirs alone, there will be silence. For once, I will be loud, and not one of them will be able to erase me again. It was a Tuesday, 5 days after the funeral. The house still smelled faintly of lilies. The sorting, the claiming, The clearing had begun, and the clearing began with me. "We've decided it's best," my daughter-in-law Jody said. "He can move to the small room downstairs." I blinked. "The laundry room?" "Technically, it's a utility space," she corrected with a tight smile, "but there's room for a cot." My bedroom, our bedroom, was already gone. I could hear laughter upstairs, drawers pulled open, my books, my old uniforms. They were being packed into boxes, not carefully, just removed. I shuffled slowly toward the stairs only to see a label stuck to one of the boxes. "Old Man Junk." Jody's husband, my son, Peter's son, was holding a clipboard. "That end table's perfect for the cabin," he said. A neon pink post-it note appeared on the oak surface. "This one's mine." Jody turned to me. "He doesn't need a room," she said to the group. "Just a bed until he's gone." I walked slowly, knees stiff, to the utility space. It smelled like bleach and mildew. A single bare bulb flickered. A cot had been pushed against the wall. That was to be my room. On the cot was a cracked framed photo from our 30th anniversary. They had stashed it behind the refrigerator. They didn't even want to look at it. They forget that I remember everything. I remember the night Celia and I carved our initials into the porch rail. I remember holding Peter as he wept over his college rejection, whispering, "You're still enough." But now I'm just a placeholder, a logistical burden. That night, I sat on the cot, peeling open a tin of soup I'd hidden from the pantry. I had to use the end of a key to open it. She built soup. That's what they whispered earlier. As if nourishment wasn't a foundation. As if warmth and sacrifice meant nothing because it didn't show up in a stock portfolio. They say I built soup, yes, but I also built them. And now they are tearing me down with giggles and neon tape. The cruelty is never loud. It's quiet, surgical, polite, but it cuts just the same. Later, when the house went still, I returned the anniversary photo to my chest. They may think they've erased me, but they've only reminded me of what I once gave and what I can still take back. Tomorrow, the lawyer calls, and I will answer with the voice they forgot I had. It started with a folder, leather-bound. I kept it beneath the loose floorboard in the utility room, behind a crate of mop heads. The morning after they measured my room for spa conversion, I took the folder and walked 2 blocks to the payphone outside the pharmacy. They'd cut off my cell service, but I hadn't forgotten the number. When Mr. Alden picked up, I simply said, "It's time." The next day in his office, I laid out the documents. First, the joint trust certificate. Then, the investment agreement from 15 years ago showing the deposit from my wedding dowry and heirlooms, the money that saved the firm. Last, I slid forward the bundle of handwritten pages. "The original IPO proposal," I said softly. Mr. Alden's eyes narrowed. "You wrote this?" I sent it. I sent it with a pseudonym. She submitted it as her own. He called in a specialist that very afternoon. The analyst sent a report. The handwriting was a match, 100%, and the original work contained intellectual property clauses. Copyright and authorship belonged to me. According to federal patent law, the framework for the IPO was considered an invention. Because it had never been formally transferred, and I could prove authorship, the royalty rights defaulted back to me. Millions, possibly more. Mr. Alden looked at me across his desk. "You understand what this means?" I nodded. "I don't want the money," I said. "Not all of it. I want my voice back." I allowed myself to smile. They buried me while I was still thinking. They assumed quiet meant useless, that love meant absence. They thought I'd faded like the wallpaper, but I was simply watching and remembering. The paper trail was with the court. By the time they sat down at the will reading, it would all be ready. I would let them have their party, their games, their jokes. They had forgotten me, and that was their last mistake. I made them sit at the end of the table, a folding chair, of course. The law office was modern, cold. My son Peter sat nearest to the front, legs crossed, sipping espresso. "She'll be dead by next Christmas," he muttered to Jody. "Don't expect a dime for her." Mr. Alden walked in, briefcase in hand. "Thank you all for being here," he began. "Today, we are here to execute the final wishes of Mrs. Celia Vance, as stated in her legally binding, revised will." He reached into his case and removed a small silver voice recorder. He clicked it on. Celia's voice filled the room, slower than I remembered, but clear, calm, measured. "If my son ever speaks ill of his father," the voice said, "deduct $1 million per word." Silence. The breath left the room like a vacuum. The voice continued, "You know how many he owes." There was a moment of stunned stillness, followed by the clack of a pen falling from Peter's hand. "What the hell does that mean?" he asked, sitting forward. "That's not real." Mr. Alden held up one hand and slid forward a printed transcript. The heading read, "Exhibit A, verified transcript, home security system, kitchen, 3 days after funeral." He turned the page. 1. He's still breathing. 2. Thought he'd be gone by now. 3. Maybe we should check his pulse while reading. 4. He built soup. She built an empire. Mr. Alden continued reading the transcript. 58, 71, 84. Total recorded statements deemed ill of his father. 88, Mr. Alden concluded, placing a neat period on the table. That totals $88 million in deductions. He explained the remaining penalty. An additional $3,996,000 were subtracted as discretionary penalty, as per Clause 14C in Mrs. Vance's addendum. Remaining inheritance for Mr. Peter Vance, $3,800. Peter leapt from his seat. "This is insane. You can't do this. That man, he's been a burden for years. Mom wouldn't." "She would," I said quietly. It was the first time I'd spoken all morning. Everyone turned. My voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. It was the clear signal of a commander taking the field. Mr. Alden, calm as ever, continued. "Now, as for the primary beneficiary of the trust, the copyrights, and the remaining estate assets, Mrs. Vance has left them to her husband, Colonel Richard Vance." He handed me the folder. It was heavier than I expected. Inside were the deeds, the portfolio transfers, and the rights to the intellectual property tied to the IPO model. A second, smaller folder held a deed to an apartment in Paris and a letter, Celia's handwriting. "Forgive me, Rich, for the years I let your light stay hidden. I never forgot. I only hoped someday they would see what I did. If they couldn't, then let this speak louder than I ever could. You built this with me. Now, let the world know your name." Peter stood frozen, face white. His wife was frantically dialing. I looked around the room full of people who had practiced their victory speeches. Justice doesn't require noise, it just needs truth. I gathered my coat. I walked slowly past Peter, whose hand was clenched into a fist. As I passed the coat rack, I turned to Mr. Alden. "Will that be all?" "Enjoy Paris, Colonel." I turned back to the family I had fed, clothed, shielded, and finally outlived. "You buried me while I was still thinking," I said steady. "Too bad I had one more idea left." The patent disclosure. The silence wasn't just awkward, it was bone deep, but I wasn't done. Mr. Alden motioned for the second envelope. This, he said, pertained to an intellectual property matter not previously disclosed to the family. He laid the documents before the room. 15 years ago, shortly before Vance Industries avoided bankruptcy, an anonymous proposal was submitted. This model became the blueprint for the company's public offering. Peter raised an eyebrow. What does this have to do with anything? It was Mom's company, her plan. Mr. Alden calmly flipped to the third page. It has everything to do with this, Mr. Vance, because we recently concluded forensic analysis on the original drafts. The pseudonym was his. He pointed to me. Your father, Colonel Richard Vance. Gasps. Even the air in the room seemed to hesitate. This, he continued, holding up a framed certificate, is the formal recognition of Colonel Richard Vance as the sole intellectual contributor to Patent 1-229-4157B, also known as the Vance Stabilization Model. The patent now yields residuals through multiple licensing streams, amounting to $9.4 million annually. Peter's wife clutched her scarf. He made soup, Peter stammered. He fixed the gutters. Mr. Alden allowed himself the faintest of smiles. Yes, and he saved your mother's legacy. He pulled a letter, Celia's final note to the firm, from a separate envelope. Before her passing, Mrs. Vance left this personal note. He read aloud. He found the cure before the world knew it was broken. I asked him to let me take the credit because the board wouldn't follow a man in a supporting role. But I knew. This company is his mind on paper. A sharp breath from the back of the room. I met Peter's eyes. I didn't know, he whispered. I didn't know it was you. I didn't answer. I'd spent years erasing my name so his mother could be seen as whole. I drew the map, I said quietly, buttoning my coat, and you all thought it appeared by accident. The reclamation. They were given 48 hours. That's what the letter said. A legal deadline for the ungrateful to vanish from the house they once trampled. I walked through the home slowly, gently, as if reintroducing myself to a recovered asset. The hallway no longer cluttered with arrogance. I passed the guest room, now emptied of its spa room fantasies. I peeled the small sticker off the mirror. This one's mine. I peeled them all off. They just thought kindness was consent. In the dining room, I paused by the grand piano. That one was always Celia's, I whispered. Outside, I stepped onto the back porch. Near the base of the pomegranate tree was a little rose bush I planted when Peter turned 5. Forgotten. I knelt, fetched the watering can, and poured slowly. As the water sank in, I whispered, "We bloom again." I sold the house the following spring, not out of anger, just because it no longer felt like mine. Some places collect too much noise. I moved into a small penthouse near the sea in Santa Barbara, the kind of place with wide windows, white curtains, and the hush of waves. No whispers behind doors, no stickers claiming what never belonged to them. The royalties continued to arrive. I didn't need it all. So I started something new. The Erased Builders Fund. It provided scholarships and grants to women who had built silently and been forgotten loudly. Outside my new door, I hung a hand-carved sign. This house was funded by a burden. Enjoy the silence. Inside, I taped a faded drawing to the fridge, crayon on construction paper, drawn by my youngest grandson years ago. It said, "To Grandpa, you think better than Google." They had buried me in assumptions, old, tired, fading, irrelevant. But I wasn't any of those things. I was patient. I was watching. I was still thinking. If you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or pushed aside, just remember, your story isn't over until you decide it is. He was more than a husband, more than a father, more than a retired officer. He was the mind that built the map, and when they erased him, he rewrote the ending. If this story moved you, imagine how many others are still waiting to be heard. This is the Elder's voice, and we are amplifying the truth. Like this video if you believe in quiet power, and subscribe to our channel, The Elder's Voice, for more true tales of strength, justice, and the wisdom of those who refuse to disappear quietly. Because silence may be golden, but truth, that's priceless.